All right. Okay, welcome to this talk show, Ole Talk Show. This is our first talk show, and today we are going to introduce ourselves. So, Helen, if you want to introduce yourself first.
Okay, thanks, Ollie. So I'm Helen, and I've got long background in education, and an even longer one in astrology, actually. And it's been really nice to meet Ollie, and we're just getting together to chat some astro stuff, and you'll find out a bit more about us as the weeks go on. Now, I really wanted to surprise you today, Ollie, and introduce you to somebody that's really, really important to me. We're going to be talking about Synastry, but he's under the desk and he won't come out. I'm talking about my dog, Rusty. You will meet him, I promise you. But I've literally tried to get him out, and he's not having any of it this afternoon. But if he pops him out, don't be surprised if I just plonk him up there to say hello. He's a King Charles Cavalier, and it's just the cutest. But I'll tell you a bit more about the Synastry, once you've had a chance to introduce today's theme, okay?
Okay, I'm just curious, but you've got his natal chart?
I don't have a time of birth, so obviously, we can mess about with rectification there. But
Okay.
I do have his son, of course. He was born on the 10th of September 2022, and that sun falls exactly on my Pluto in my chart, which we were talking about synastry, which suggests a kind of, obsession. Which he is, but I'll show you. If he appears, you'll see him. If not today, next week. Okay.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to introduce myself because the last time I didn't introduce myself properly. I'm Oliver. I'm Spanish, and I started studying astrology a long time ago, and I studied at the Faculty of Astrological Studies in London. I studied also traditional astrology at the STA, and I also studied for many years a course in miracles, which is something I also, well, I try to use in the, that's my philosophy as for synastry and other things. So I try to incorporate it in the natal and astrological readings. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
So
I just want to say that Ollie and I did not plan to wear the same shirt. So this is a really, interesting omen that we've both got these sort of green and blue plaid shirts on today. It looks as if we, emailed each other to say, "What are you wearing?" but we didn't. Just to twin with you again, I also studied at the STA, same as Ollie, and my diploma in astrology is from the London School of Astrology. So just a shout out to those guys, and I did early studies with the FAS too. So we've got a lot of common astrology history ground together too.
yes. Yeah, what a coincidence, our clothes today.
It's really
Yeah.
weird. It's just really, it's just really odd. So if we can manage to do this every week, Ollie, then there's something definitely going on.
Just I decided to put this shirt on just 10 minutes ago. I was thinking, what could I wear for the show? And I was thinking a t-shirt, a shirt, a jumper. I said, okay, let's wear um, a shirt, which is a bit more fancy. And yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just making me smile.
Hmm. Okay, so um, you would suggest it talking about who, what, and when, and where.
Well,
So
let's
some general
shall we just
things
say
about
what we're going
things.
to do over the next today and then next week. We really Ollie and I want to talk about synastry in astrology, and maybe we need to say what it really means to us, Ollie. If somebody said you're going to talk about synastry, what does it? I think that's what I was sort of saying. Who is it? What is it? When does it? When can you use it? Where would you use it?
Hmm.
And why would you use it? I kind of often ask myself those questions to try and put things in context. But what does synastry mean to you? I'm actually really curious to know that. Anyway.
Well, for me, it's like a literal map or route of how the other person is going to affect or influence you. It's like straightforward, the connection you are going to have, the challenges you're going to have with a certain person, and the potential of a relationship as well. And you can read also the synchronicities when you are meant to meet someone. You see there's a specific transit or eclipse. So for me, Synastry is yeah, it's like a roadmap
Mm.
of relationships, all kind of relationships, no, family, partnerships, friendships. Yes,
Pets. Don't forget your pets.
that's something I didn't think about because we in Spain we are not that much into pets as in Britain. I know that in Britain is very very popular. Having
Yeah.
pets is something like wow. I know that you say in Britain you call them using the pronoun he or she. No,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
more
yeah, yeah,
personalized.
yeah, yeah. So I was just thinking, I absolutely agree with you about the roadmap. But recently I was in a room full of astrologers, and if talking to the non-astrologers out there or people who've never been in a room full of astrologers, it's an amazing experience because everybody's saying things like, oh, well, where's your moon? Oh, my moon's there. Oh, that means my Mercury's on your moon. Oh, my Venus is with that Mars. Yeah, yeah, no, I've got the same thing, but it's in the seventh house. And automatically, all those astrologers are reading each other, and they're reading
Hmm,
those connections, and they're reading the roadmaps. But you
yeah.
cannot, I don't think I've ever walked into a room of astrologers without some kind of synastry going on and some kind of like, well, where's your Jupiter, or my ascendant's this, and where it's just everybody's making those connections all the time. But what's happening with astrologers is that we're sort of synthesizing all that information and going through it, and at the same time making judgments, which is, I think, is an interesting part of synastry, as to how those relationships might affect us. And I think there's something quite interesting there about that judgment making, which will depend on previous experience, because somebody who's got a Mars conjunct your Jupiter, which is something we have actually, Ollie, I think, um, is is not necessarily going to be the same as somebody else who might have Mars conjunct your Jupiter. And I think sometimes astrologers just need to take a step back from the synastry and let it all float in. We'll never come away from discussing it, but let it all float
Hmm.
in, and yeah, just apply a bit more time and process to it, maybe, rather than quickly thinking that's this or that's that. And I think that's a danger with synastry, to go down that path, which is why, I welcome the opportunity to talk about it in a bit more depth with you.
Hmm. Yeah, I like Synastry because it's a clear way to decode, no, the energies when you see that you click with someone and you see there's a purpose. Because for me, it's like the planets are alive, and this archetype of that energy or that plot is activating a story that is developing throughout the relationship. For example, maybe a person has got Jupiter conjuncting the other person's moon or Venus, and then all of a sudden they feel so confident, and like there are many opportunities, so they feel at ease. And I think it's yeah, very very clarifying. And I agree with you when astrologers we meet with other astrologers. I think it's the connections are even more are clearer because you address a person because you don't know why, but there's something on there, no? And
Mm-hmm.
there's some planets which are um, connecting your chart or triggering important aspects, and it's fascinating because that's my experience. I foresee relationships so differently, and it's a as if you knew what tribe is the other person, and I like this tribe because we've got this in common, and it's like an adventure. So yeah, it's quite fun.
Yeah, I mean, I recently had just a few friends who are beginner astrologers around on a Zoom call, just to teach them some very literally meanings of signs and planets, going right back to beginner stuff, which is it's quite difficult to do after years talking astro speak. But And just from sun signs, the synastry in the group started to become very evident. It was nearly all fire signs. So if we look at the
Mm,
elements, we were, it was nearly all. Sagittarius was very prominent, um, and air signs were very prominent. So it goes from the elemental level of fire, earth, air, and water. And I don't know if you were taught this, Ollie, but I certainly was. That if your chart is predominantly, I just use my own for example, fire and earth, then often I will seek out the elements that I don't have in my chart, so air and water. So this is what plays into synastry as well. I think you will
mm,
have a bunch of friends. Say, I'm not, as you said, synastry is relationship, it's partnership, it's people you work with, it's friends. I added pets to that list because I will, but you synastry works in two ways for me that way. You seek people who are like you and who
mm,
gonna laugh at the same things that you laugh at and things like that. But you also seek out people who kind of give you the missing element in your chart. So for me, that might well be water signs that I go and seek because I've got that sort of grounding earth and the very sort of wandy fire that goes up there. But sometimes I need to be reminded about feelings or just that side of life and how to access the more sort of sensitive realm. I think it's, yeah, because
mm,
the fire signs, particularly Sag, can be a little bit like foot in the mouth, bounding along and just say the first thing that's on their mind. And a water sign might encourage me to be a little bit more reflective. So this is when building teams or working with big groups and things, it's really useful to have an overview of even just the elements. So just sun signs can give you
mm,
quite a feel. I know we started off by talking about those immediate aspects, but even just elements of astrology can give you a feel for things that you seek and things that you might need to seek. So yeah, I mean it's all good stuff, really, isn't it? But like you say, you can probably tell if you're in a room and you've got an immediate connection with somebody. If it's really quick. So here's something. If we're at a party, let's say we're at a party, Ollie. Friday night, we're going into the weekend, we're at a party, okay, and you go into the room and you meet somebody you've not met them before, and the conversation just sparks. It's really quick. It's really sort of mutually receptive. One idea bounces off another. What kind of planetary influences? What kind of planetary connection would you look for if afterwards in the chart? Because we would, because we're astrologers.
mm. Yes, and also taking into account what we've got in our seventh house is very important because
Okay.
that's one of the main parts that that appears, no, when we relate to others,
Yeah,
and the
it's
things
kind of what we
that's
project. Yeah.
yeah, many people are complaining, oh, I always find alcoholics or people who are into drugs or who are always playing video games and they've got this specific planet in their seventh house.
It wouldn't be
And
Neptune, would it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's for me, that's very interesting because it even happened to me with a planet. I've got Pluto, and at the very beginning, I was a bit. Well, obviously, things were very complex. Relationships were difficult, were hard, were really deep,
Mm.
but that's
Intense with Pluto, because
intense,
that's the same
dramatic.
relationship I've got with my dog.
Yes, yes, you've got. If you said that your sun is conjunct,
Mm-hmm.
his
His
no,
Pluto, yeah.
his sun is conjuncting your Pluto.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, very transformative. Yes, yeah, very, very, very. But then, if you learn that, if you know how your birth chart works, you understand what is the purpose. Well, because you've got that planet for a reason. I mean, it's not uh, just a coincidence. And then you learn, okay, so I know that I need to transform, and relationships are transformative, and it's for my it's for something that is positive. And then when you change your consciousness, it becomes a bit lighter. It's not really, really easy, but you are aware of, or you know. And I think that's something very positive about synastry, you know the purpose of a relationship, and
Mm.
that helps you to just to know what, because at the end I think relationships are a way to evolve, because they are sometimes they are challenging, and as you said before, we meet people who have elements we don't have in our charts, so it's a way to integrate them. And if you know the dynamics that are appearing on the synastry, you know what is meant to be learned from that relationship.
Yeah.
And and it becomes easier because it's okay, this is what I have to do. And you can have fun as well, but there's some lesson, and it helps you to understand the lesson.
Yeah. So you mentioned the seventh house there. Um, and obviously that's in astrology that's is critical in terms of like all relationships. So we call it the house of the others, don't we? And so Pluto there is going to have that transformative feel. Just before that, we were laughing and joking about I only meet alcoholics and druggies that might have a Neptunian feel. So part of the challenge with astrology is to look at what the energy is and to find the best representation for it. And I think if we just take us back to basics there for a minute, we work with the planets and they have like good sides and bad sides. A bit, Pluto has that transformative energy, but it can also be extremely obsessive. Neptune
Hmm.
can have that sort of toxic quality, but it can also be highly spiritual. And it's so what astrology teaches in terms of relationships is how to get the best out of the energies that you've got there, how to use them, which I think supports what you're saying about things getting easier. Because
Hmm.
particularly if you study something like astrology, you learn that actually you might have been using a planet at one of its lower levels, and now
Yeah.
because you know a bit more about it, you can use it at a higher level, um, and not to be scared of that. I mean, there's something innately beautiful
Hmm.
and positive in all the planets. It's like I was listening today to actually it was Frank Clifford talking, and he was saying one of his pet hates is about when people come to see an astrologer because they've been told something really disastrous about
Hmm.
a planet or a position in a chart, and that can take some undoing. So it's just I just would reiterate that theme. You need to see somebody who knows what they're talking about, because otherwise these myths, planetary myths,
Hmm.
can bound around. And so somebody, if you were speaking to somebody who hadn't done the full training, I guess, actually, Ollie, and they said, oh, God, Neptune's on the seventh house cusp, that means you're doomed for life. It's not the case. It's about learning to work to find the best strategies to use that planet.
Hmm. Yeah, I
That's
like.
all.
Hmm.
Yeah. Which brings
I
me
like.
something that you had mentioned in bringing the topic of synastry this way, if you like, was the ethics around synastry, which I think is worth a bit of a dive into, because as an astrologer, if I've got a client and they've come to see me, which they often do, and it will be about a relationship issue, how comfortable do you feel? You can only really discuss that relationship issue from their point of view and that chart, because you haven't got the partner's chart in front of you, and you would need permission to have that other chart really in front of you. So that's something around the ethics of synastry. But I was also really interested in the philosophical point that you brought up, which is about free will and synastry. Is it all written in the stars and we can't do anything about it? Or what about the aspect of free will? I'd be really interested to know what your stance is around the ethics and the philosophy. So I'm not messing about here. We're going straight into sort of the heavy stuff.
Okay. Well, as for the ethics, yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's important that the person has got the other person's brings the permission to show the other person's natal chart, but without the permission, we can also infer some information from the person's natal chart, because some indicators have got mean or refer to how the person relates to others, and specifically to partners. So despite not
Yeah,
having the other person's permission, there's still some information, and deriving the houses, we can also
yeah,
infer some information. So I think there's always information that can we can bring to the consultants in case they don't have the permission.
yeah,
And as for the free will, I think it's quite, sometimes it can be tricky or difficult to explain, because I think there are levels, many levels. In one level, we think we choose or we've got free will, but this is because I studied A Course in Miracles, and in A Course in Miracles, it basically says that I just took some quotations from there. For example, every relationship is an opportunity to heal, and they explain how who is meant to you are meant to meet somebody, and that person is meant to meet you sometime. So I don't think there's a free will, because I think there's always a kind of spirit or the life or the universe guiding you. So you think that you choose, you make decisions, but you are not acting. You are not. This is the ego who thinks that is making decisions, but you are not choosing. And it's a bit tricky because there are different levels, and some people can get confused, or they can say, "Oh, so I remember I told this to a friend of mine, and she said that she didn't like that idea of not choosing. I thought, well, I think that might be because your ego wants to have the freedom to choose, not to feel free to choose, and accepting that you cannot choose, and the experiences that are meant to occur, not the experiences, but the people, or yeah, some experiences. I think we can, depending on our level of consciousness, we can experience differently things, or maybe an experience. For example, you've got a Pluto transit, and is meant to transform you somehow. If you haven't done any work at all, I probably the experience will be much harder than if you've done previously some transformative process or healing process. So I think that that's a level of not choice, because you cannot choose if you want to learn more or less, but how you have experienced things and your level of consciousness. I think it makes a difference in terms of how you experience things, but not the idea that you choose. Do you understand what I mean?
yeah. I do understand what you mean, and I think it's a really. I mean, I just threw the question out there, but it's a really really complex
Yeah,
situation for astrologers, and I think it's one that's concerned astrologers through history. Actually, so I was thinking of the 17th century astrologer William Lilly, who was a very, very busy astrologer in London in, like 1640s. And on his shop or on his publications, he always had the word non-cogent, meaning they do not compel. In other words, he was putting forward the argument that although the stars are this, that they are placed, you're not, you still have free will. Now, for him, in his context and at that time, it would be really important to say that, because he was probably up against, well, he was up against a lot of religious power, and it was really important that the power of God would not be challenged in any way by thinking that you had the ego to be able to do something with the stars, or that the stars were more powerful, or anything like that. But it just came to my mind today, because he was a Hori astrologer, so they take a map, the roadmap of the minute, and he was able to answer successfully very many questions that way. But it was important to him to say, there they are, but they do not compel. Now, like you, and maybe because of my ego, I like to think that I do have some free will in how I use those planets. But the fact that the planets are there, or that, we've spoken about Pluto in the seventh house, we've spoken about Neptune in the seventh house. You've also mentioned transit, which is what the planets in the sky are doing to those planets in the chart. And as astrologers, we know how to read those things. At that moment, it feels destined. Okay, so I have a foot in both camps here, I think, because the chart to me is something so spiritual and so magical. It's a moment that's given, your birth chart when you're born, the transits to it. I just, I don't know that I would be able to read them unless there was somebody guiding me to do that, which is
Mm.
why no matter how much not to get into this particular debate about AI, but no matter how much AI you've got, which is brilliant for actually interpreting astrology, but you still need the astrologer who can kind of like receive those messages that or how to say
Mm.
those things from the map in front of them. So this is, I mean, I know that a lot of astrologers are talking about this. So this is the moment of the spiritual destiny, but I still like to feel that I can use that positive side of Pluto or Neptune or the Mars square Venus, or I can see it for what it might be in a different way. That I've got some control how I can use those influences. The influences are given for me. That's the destiny
Mm.
part. How I use those influences is down to my free will. So it's complex, but I think that's exactly what I'm saying. They are given by whomever, but
Yeah,
once they
because astrology is something
yeah,
magical when you see how is real, how is affecting, how is decoding things, and I think and explains so many things in your life about your relationships, where you live, when things happen, when a business starts. So I think this is not something it's is out of where. I mean,
yeah.
it's magical. It's incredible. I think humans cannot create that. I think it's
No, I mean it's
given
like
by
yeah, yeah. It's like you studied horary astrology too. Where is my missing
Mm,
handbag, and you can find it because of the chart you cast at the time.
mm,
This is crazy stuff, but it's true and it happens. So this is spiritually given, something destined here.
mm.
How it works, I don't know. But then once you've got those, it's like horror, it's like natal astrology. We work with a set of rules, then, don't we? In natal astrology or synastry, we're working with a set of rules then. So which planets we're going to look at first, which houses we might look at. We're given a map, which is destiny. And then we use our art or skill and our knowledge as astrologers to interpret that. And so, with synastry, it's about it's about the connections that we make as people, and it's all the connections that we make as people, and that can be. We mentioned connections in relationships. I keep talking about connections with pets, connections in business, in work. There's also probably connections with places, plants. I mean, it's to life. So synastry for me is a very sort of broad heading that means the connections that we make in life, certain place, certain time. If you looked at astrocartography and you travel on your moon line because you're going to feel, there's just so much. Astrology is so huge. So if anybody's not
Mm.
put a toe in the water of astrology yet, it's just vast and it's thousands of years old, and we're using something that's really quite magical and mystical. But as astrologers, we've
Yeah,
been given a set of tools to interpret that, which has never ceased to amaze me, I have to say. So
and also the other point of projection, no, that I think is at the beginning can be quite tough if we are not aware of projection, how it works, how we've got a natal chart. If we don't integrate our energies, we are going to project that planet or that energy into our life, and we can be in conflict with that if we don't try to integrate that energy. For example, I had a client who had her ex partner had the same moon as her dad's, and I
Okay.
thought, wow, that's incredible because obviously, if you have not integrated that energy, you're gonna
Yeah.
find a partner who's got that moon and is asking, okay, you need to embrace that part. Maybe you don't like that part, that energy, but as long as you don't do this personal work, you are going to meet the same kind of people. So, wow, I think that's why I think that understanding working with projection is basic in order to return, no? To go, I mean, to reconcile all the energies and to feel a bit better, at
Yeah.
least. What do you think about projection?
Yeah. I mean, I was pleased that you used an example um, there, Ollie. Things. So this part is feels destined. This is like stuff that you can't. You in that room of astrologers that are all saying, "I've got this and I've got that, and what have you got and what have you got this," and oh, that means within that same room, there's people saying, "Oh, you just can't write this." That's what we end up saying to each other. We just can't write this because the coincidences and the synchronicities that come from charts, and if it's if you look through charts of families too, you will
Mm,
see the same patterns. So
mm,
I'm not going to talk too much about my daughters, but they're born in different years. And obviously at different times of the year and different times of the day, they both have a moon conjunct Uranus in Pisces. And this is, which means that their mum is unconventional, or an astrologer maybe,
mm,
and all the rest. But you can't write that. That's the universe
mm.
having a hand in this. So the client of yours who's got the dad's moon, yes, there's a lesson there, and I think these lessons in charts get handed down quite karmically unless they are projected and sorted out. Do you?
Yeah,
That's how I feel. I think if you I mean there has been a lot of work done on this, but if you to just go back to your own families charts, it's difficult if you haven't got birth times and things like that. So I just use my immediate family as an example there. But there are these patterns. There are these patterns. I mean, I remember looking at the 1066 chart for the UK, and then tracing the royal family's charts from that with the heavy Capricorn emphasis and the Earth, and it's still going on. It just still keeps going on. These patterns keep recurring, generation after generation after generation. So I don't know. Is that because we haven't dealt with stuff, or is that because we're still learning those lessons? I guess it's interesting because it brings the whole idea of karma
mm,
in, and
yeah.
that's probably a subject for another day because that's huge. But we'd have to get into the nodes and the draconic chart and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I don't know what your experience of that is, if you've seen that play out in family charts.
The dynamics, you mean?
Yeah, it's like synastry because they're points of contact that the family has running through them.
Yeah, I've seen charts in which they repeated contacts between, yes, some patterns with Saturn, the Moon, and both people had their, because that's an indicator of our mother who is ill, and the siblings had that pattern, that aspect, and yeah, some like maybe there were some planets which were the personal ones, one that was quite powerful. Or for example, I remember there was a that was quite scary. I had a friend from my school, and they were four, two girls and one boy, and one of the girls, well, now she's older, she's in her 40s, but she's a bit psychologically she's ill, and she went back to live with her mom. And well, there was a point of aggressiveness within the family. I knew the story because I knew this my classmate since I was a child, and I knew there was a very intense, dramatic, aggressive story. So in the end, her sister killed the mom, and I was curious, and I checked. I didn't know that the birth time, but I checked the siblings' natal charts, and all of them had the same moon in Scorpio,
Okay. Yeah.
and the mom had also the moon in Scorpio. So you realize the chart itself was already indicating a dynamic. Sometimes it's not, we don't need to look into specific aspects. Sometimes just repeating the same moons is telling something, no?
Yeah.
So
So just
yes,
we better just say if you've got Moon in Scorpio, does not mean that you're necessarily going to
yeah, because you're gonna be scared that many people have got the moon Scorpio and
yeah,
they don't
yeah,
have that
and they haven't had a
a
similar history. But I think what's
tragedy.
interesting from what you've said there is that pattern of repetition, because when
Yes,
you do
yeah,
have that repetition, you know,
yes.
again, it can be significant in some
Hmm.
ways to the family. So, oh gosh, that's quite an extreme example, Ollie. But it's
Yeah.
the
But the funny thing is, yes.
yeah. No, go on. Funny thing is,
That the funny thing or the positive thing is that I see the positive aspect of that. For example, my friend, she's she has changed so much since then, since that tragedy, and she's not following the family dynamics.
uh-huh.
So somehow this moon was asking her to regenerate, to just a death
So
and to be reborn, and then
yes, the
creating a
rebirth
new.
side of
Yes,
Scorpio.
so
Yeah,
there's always a positive aspect or something that is needs to be
yeah,
healed, no, within the
yeah,
family. But
yeah.
in that
I
case,
think it's
everything was.
interesting that you've used that example today as well, because of course the sun's just gone into Scorpio. You know, we're doing a Halloween special next week, which is all about sort of the bad rep that poor old Scorpio gets in the eighth house. But it isn't just the death side of life. It is very much about the birth side of life and that
Mm,
ability to transform and heal from these things
mm.
as well. So
By the
yeah,
way, today we've got the Sun squaring Pluto,
I
so
know.
it's not
Yeah,
a
yeah,
coincidence
yeah, yeah.
we
But we've
talk about
also got
Plutonian.
Mercury trine Jupiter. So
Mm,
you know, so the sun square Pluto UK time, I don't know, about 2 something this afternoon, and really quickly followed by the Mercury Jupiter trine, which is feeding into this groundwater trine that everybody's, all the astrologers are talking about, which is fair enough because it's exciting stuff. But I just wondered what that might mean. It's almost like that sun square Pluto. It's like that shocking story that you've just told us about death and patterns and
yeah,
moons. But there is a happy ending at the end of it to be able to transform from something
but I
like that.
think that the family itself needed that. It was kind of needing that specific drama in order to heal. Apart, that's why I like the other philosophy of the Course of Miracles, because obviously in this, in from a human perspective, is so dramatic, is a tragedy, is painful, but you realize that it was kind of orchestration that was meant to happen because of all that was needed, all the aggressiveness, all the, I suppose that all kind of darkness, and
Mm,
so that perspective um, helps you to just foresee everything in a more, I think, wider perspective, no, in
mm,
somehow, and understanding and, and forgiving.
yeah,
And because I think the important thing is forgiving what happens. It's not about being naive, but
yeah,
also about understanding and just be at peace with what happens. No.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've covered quite a lot of ground with the Synastry now, from talking about sort of family dynamics plus going to a party and the sort of energies that can be exchanged, the seventh house, importance of the seventh house in terms of more integral relationships in your life, I guess, and not sort of just passers by. And I think you thought it might be quite good fun to sort of try and imagine that we are planets.
Okay. Yes.
Me and you are planets, and how we might just greet each other. So we could probably put this in a little bit more context and say, we've got a client who's come to us to discuss what many clients come to astrologers for, which is actually to discuss romantic relationships or important relationships. I guess it could be business dynamics too, but it's some kind of like meaningful contact with another person. We see that we've got permission to use the other person's chart. Let's say they're there. Let's say we've got a couple there. And we can see that there is a I don't know. Let's take Mars Jupiter as a contact. Those two planets in their charts connect. They're conjunct. Astrologers would say they are conjunct. What might our conversation be like? Do you want to be Mars or Jupiter? I might have a bit of chaos in the background in a minute. I've been trying to sort of minimize it, but just someone's just arrived. Where do you want to be, Mars or Jupiter? And we'll go for it anyway.
I want to be Mars.
You want to be Mars? Okay. Well, in which case you'll be starting the conversation, of course, because Mars has got to be there first and all the rest of it. Okay, so I'll be Jupiter, and this is the contact. So we're just going to try and demonstrate what a Mars Jupiter contact might feel like in a chart.
Okay, so I would say, would you like to go for a walk?
I'd like to go for a hike. Actually, I really feel like climbing a mountain today.
Oh, okay. Or a marathon, maybe better, no? Just to be.
You want to go fast? Do you want
Yes.
to go fast? Hang on a minute, Holly. I'm just going to have to.
I was meant to be the one who would disappear because Mars is
Sorry,
quicker.
best laid plans. So sorry, I was being Jupiter there, saying
I was saying that I was the person who was meant to disappear because I was meant to be quicker than you. Not Jupiter wouldn't.
This is Jupiter doing 2 or 3 things at once. Okay, it's me just like spinning too many plates. So Jupiter says no to a walk. Let's go for a hike. And Mars has come back saying, yeah, you want to run a marathon. And Jupiter says, why run one? Why don't we train for around the world? Triathletes. Let's just go and do the Iron People Challenge, and let's just do it all.
But I think at the end I would have been on my own because Mars couldn't wait.
Yeah.
And that's something that happens to me with my ascendant Aries.
Yeah,
sometimes I cannot wait. I'm so impatient. I want things to be done now, and when it takes time, it's quite difficult. So I understand Mars quite well.
Yeah. I live with a lot of Martian energy around me, and it is the key word for Mars is now. But what Ollie and me were trying to demonstrate there is Mars is quick to action and Jupiter just wants to make it bigger. They're actually quite, in terms of compatibility, they're two planets where the energies can work quite well together. But whatever Mars wants to do, Jupiter will just inflate. So it's a really kind of, I don't know, I've had clients with Mars Jupiter. It's a really impulsive energy. It's just huge. It's like rocket fire. It was particularly if it was in a fire sign.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, let's imagine a context in a party and we meet. And do you want to be Venus or Saturn?
Oh, I'd be better at Saturn. I'm a bit older and I've got Saturn on an angle.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I can do a good Saturn.
This time.
Everybody just needs to understand we're having a bit of fun here. We're taking stereotypes of the planets. We're not genuinely being serious, and it would depend on house, other aspects, the whole feel of the chart, where they are in the chart, above and below, all of that. But this is just a bit of fun, okay? So I'll be Saturn.
Yeah. Okay, so we are in the party, and I see you. Oh, wow, Helen. You are such a beautiful woman. Would you like a drink?
No, thank you. That does not fit in with my routine today. I'm on a very, very strict diet and absolutely no alcohol because, it's very aging. So that's certainly not what I would do. I like your compliment, but you have a drink. It's not for me, no.
I'm gonna have a drink because I want to enjoy the party and I love drinking and I will have fun. But I pity that you don't want to join me.
Um, well, no, I mean, I need to take some time really to think about things. I
You
just
want
need
to be
to.
on your own then.
Well, I'd kind of like to be on my own and take a bit of time, but then I might feel a bit lonely as well, as well. Um,
I'm bored,
but then I could
maybe.
feel sorry for myself sitting in the corner, being a lonely old Saturn in the corner, especially with lovely Venus, chatting me up and all the rest of it. But yeah, no, I better be on my own because it's the most sensible thing to do.
Okay, then I will look for more enjoyable people.
I
I'm
think I
sorry.
think that's a good idea because I'm a bit, poor old Saturn. Hey, come back in about 30 years and I'll be fine. I'll have gone through my first Saturn return and I'll be much better at being able to take that drink and enjoy myself and just go
Mm.
with the flow a bit. Um, so yeah,
Oh, we've got a question from the well, a comment, and it says, "What crisis happened in a relationship?" Do you want to answer that question?
in our relationship, Ollie, or
No,
in
I think it's in general, a question about synastry in general,
in
or
general.
in relationships.
I
But
think
I
I think
think
that's quite difficult to answer because it would really depend personally on the context. Presumably, the person that's asked this question wants to know what kind of planets might be meeting or by transit or something, and that could be a multitude of different things, and it would very much depends on the nature of the crisis too. If you've got a Mars Pluto contact going on, it could be quite explosive. Um, Mars Uranus, you might say rash Mars Uranus Mercury, there might be really rash words exchanged and then, act in haste, repent at leisure. So you'd really need to see the chart. Is this a crisis that's a quick thing that's blown up, or is it a crisis that's happening over a long period of time? And if it's over a long period of time, I'd expect to see some of the outer planets involved in the angles with some of the inner planets there. Um, and yeah, maybe the seventh house, but it could just be those personal planets as well. It could just be with like the Mars, Venus, Moon um, as well. So it's. I appreciate the question. It's quite difficult to answer because it's quite broad. What do you think, Ollie?
um, I think it depends on the level of consciousness and also the planets, but yeah, especially the transpersonal ones hitting having a hard aspect with Venus, the personal planets, no, or the moon, especially moon or Venus, and it depends also on the configuration of the person because I think some charts are quite strong and they they are not affected that much as others, which are softer or are more receptive, for example. So I think it depends basically on the kind of birth chart, the consciousness of the person, because I believe, despite having not a good chart, which is not a good chart, an easy chart, you can learn a lot. And I'm sure that a crisis when you are 50 is not the same as when you are 30,
Mm,
especially if you've done lots of personal work.
mm.
So, more than crisis, I would say challenging periods, challenging times, and
Yeah,
also
because
what
at
you
50,
talk
50, you
about.
get your Chiron return as well, don't you? And that will just depend where Chiron is in your chart, what aspects
Mm,
that's making, and how you've managed some of those things that you've. So when you say consciousness, it's how somebody's managed those transits in their life before and what they've learned from them and grown from it. Yeah, sorry.
and also about the projection, no? Because if you understand projection, if you understand the transit you've got, and you understand, okay, I need to integrate this energy, or if you understand what the synastry you've got with the other person, the challenging aspects, you understand what you need to integrate that energy or that transformation that you are meant to experience, or that change, or changing, for example, your habits, or incorporating a new philosophy. So the crisis, I think, happens when a person resists to change. If a person is
Yeah,
not receptive,
yeah,
the crisis is not that hard.
yeah. I was sort of just thinking about that. People do find change hard. So it's quite a natural human thing to find change hard. And I was just wondering, then a question popped into my head. You know, with the modalities that we have in astrology, cardinal, fixed, and mutable, and just generally the cardinal signs are really good at like lighting the fire, getting stuff going. Fixed signs are really good at maintaining things. They've got the persistence and the determination. And mutable signs come along and say, well, let's change that. Just very generally speaking,
Mm,
I wonder if fixed signs have more difficulty with change than, say, somebody whose
yeah.
chart is largely mutable. The problem for somebody whose chart is largely mutable, on the other hand, is that they don't have the staying power to see anything through because they're off on the next adventure. And so, as we seek out in synastry people who have elements that are the same as ours and different to ours to get the balance, and as we might seek that out in relationships or teams that we build, we're also seeking that balance of modalities um, as well. And like you say, if you've done some personal work and you've worked through transits before, um, it gives you, yeah, I mean, astrology gives you some insights that are really, really valuable in life, don't they? You know. So I'm just wondering, is it harder for fixed signs to cope with change? It will depend very much on other things in the chart. I mean, it's difficult to have a general conversation about astrology sometimes without digging down into a chart, because it's so vast and so huge. It's so context dependent. But I think we've covered quite a lot of ground already just on synastry and what it is and what our approaches to it are.
Mm,
I think if you had a couple of clients came to you and said, should I marry this? As I used to go and see William Ely, should I marry this person? Um, and we're looking at contacts in the chart. We might see something like Venus Saturn, which suggests a long-term commitment, but there will be challenges with Saturn. We might see Saturn might feel a bit cold sometimes. We might see Venus and Mars, which might suggest passion, but that passion is, if it's in a fire sign, can't be sustained. It's just going to be like crikey, you know. Um, and it's knowing how those planets work and knowing that even where there are trines there can be challenges, because so trines are easy aspects between two people's planets, because that can just be like so laid back and let it go. You sometimes need a bit of a square or a semi-square or something to give a little bit of challenge, which encourages the growth that people need, because that's important for relationships to work. There need to be that receptibility to change, because it's from change that you grow. And so in a chart, it's not that squares are bad things between people. Actually, that could be where you do your most growth as a couple. Or the moon Venus is going to be pretty chill and laid back on a Friday night. And, that's if it was moon trine Venus in two charts. But you need something there that's going to, and usually it charts. I mean, I've got a strange chart with my husband. We both have Mars in the same position and Jupiter in the same position. Exactly. I didn't know that, obviously, when I met him, but it's that works well for sort of energy and jollity in our
mm.
lives. Yeah.
And there's another question. I'm going to answer it. Is, and how do you see incompatibility?
Do you want to
Incompatibility.
take that? Do you want to
Yeah.
take that first?
Okay. I think there's no general rule. There are some trends, and especially difficult aspects with the luminaries, especially with the moons. So if the moons don't have a very good aspect, they are in opposition sometimes. But I've seen couples who've got their moons in opposition. So I don't think there's a rule of thumb. I think it depends on the general chart. But for me, the luminaries, the moon and the sun, are quite important. And also, um, because some people talk about the ascendant as well, if the ascendants have got similar compatible elements. But I've seen all kind of charts. But I would say that basically, paying attention to the moon and the sun,
Mm.
or the
Yeah,
Venus is important as well, not having difficult aspects. But as you said, sometimes we need challenge in
yeah,
relationships because it's about learning. So and there are many different kind of relationships. No, in the end, I mean, that relationships, they live. Some people live together, others they don't. So, but for me, moon is about habits and living together. So if
mm.
there's a bad aspect with the moon, I
Yeah,
think it might be an indicator.
yeah. I think the moon's wonderful. I have a moon in Sagittarius, so I eat really quickly. Just like, got to get on with the next thing. Um, my husband's moon in Scorpio. We conjunct Saturn. He eats really slowly, really slowly. We found a way to make it work. We just go, and he can stay and get on with it. But it's just simple things like that. The moon is such a daily creature that
Mm,
describes even how you eat. But I agree with you. I think the sun and moon are important. And I remember reading somewhere from years ago that you often find partnerships, long lasting partnerships between people, and this is a generalization, so nobody take it as the gospel truth out there, between people whose suns are in conjunct or semi-sextile. It can be these sort of slightly more random aspects that Ollie, I'm just going to go and see if I can get Rusty. Hang on.
okay.
Come on in then. Go on,
Um,
quickly.
well, I'm going to answer one question. So when do people typically come to us? Okay,
We're
there
nearly.
are two questions. Shall we answer them briefly because we don't have much time? So
Yeah.
one question is, when do people typically come to an astrologer and request a synastry reading? Oh, so cute.
So finally, you get Rusty. I think people will come to an astrologer if. So there's something else you can do too. You can do the sort of first meeting chart. If you've just met somebody and your heart is all aflutter and you think you're nervous. Maybe you've been hurt in the past, and like most of us, and you're wondering where this is going to go. That might be when you would come, and sometimes an astrologer could look at a first meeting chart for you as well to see what sort of like the early indications are. And I've read quite a few first meeting charts in my time. Um, so I guess but then, you know, there's a bit of me that says let water flow here, let some time flow before you'd want to get that synastry chart, because you don't want to be going into a relationship that's so full of expectation of what it should be. So maybe let some time flow, and as things get serious and you're thinking maybe making the commitment, maybe then, so that you can maximise what you already know before. Don't go in. Don't go into life with a preconceived script. Um, so it's very individual, but I'd let some water flow under the bridge. And when you think, actually, this is really getting to the point now, I'd really like to know how we can best use our energies together,
Hmm.
how we can
So
best use what we've got. That would be the time to get a synastry reading.
there's another question that says, how do astrologers usually choose their partners?
We don't look at their charts. We go with the flow.
That's a funny question
That's
because
good. Yeah.
I try not to choose a partner on the birth chart, but on what I feel.
Yeah.
And and I'm going to answer this because there's a following question that says, do they really check the both sides chart before entering into a relationship. And that's funny because I think I don't use it to decide yes or no to enter in a relationship, into a relationship, but I use it to know, to learn
Yeah,
uh, what in the relationship, what I do I have to learn, what are the challenges, and so on. So it's I use it in order to get more information about yeah what is meant to be transformed, what is my responsibility upon this relationship,
yeah,
and the good things and the challenges.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, like you, I wouldn't, I wouldn't go into a room and just say, "Well, no, I can't do that because your chart's this, that, and the other." But you you would use it so that you maximise the energies that you've got going on because we've got access to that information as astrologers. So you're gonna want to use it to the max, really. Yeah. Oh, we had some good questions there, Ollie.
mhm,
Yeah.
yes.
So thank you to everybody who sent in a question.
Thank you very much for your questions, and we will see you next week.
Do you want to give them a taster of what next week's about? It's Halloween special. So, yeah, we'll cover Pluto. Yeah, we'll cover Saturn. Yeah, we'll look at the eighth house. We're going to look at fear um, because all of us feel that at some point in our life, so it's quite useful. And yeah, I'll see if I can find my bat wings anywhere. It's good to chat, Ollie.
Yes, good to chat you. Okay,
Bye.
see you.
Same time, same place next week.